members of the board, again, thank you for consideration of this budget resolution. As Board Member Prosser noted, has been subject to a great deal of review as by the full board as well as the Finance and Audit Committee and the General Manager's Budget Task Force over the last few months. I'd first of all say that this budget really continues what I would say is the hard work to stabilize the financial health of the agency. But because of some of the steps we've taken in the past, we're in the position that we can actually restore and add service and improve the quality of the service that we want to offer our customers. It also responds to the investments that were recommended by the Secretary of State's audit report. And I'd also note that it's consistent with the board's fund balance policy, its pension funding policies that you've previously adopted over the last couple of months. And it was developed in general conformance with the board's draft policies on the strategic financial plan as well. And I would just note that, just as a reminder, that the budget was developed based on the long-term forecast. Our budgets are always a snapshot in a long-term forecast because what we do has to be repeated every year into the future. And that long-term forecast does presume that we'll have some success related to our cost structure reform that we proposed with the ATU.
Now, this is the problem. Did you hear what he just said? He said his budget assumes that certain things are going to happen, and the major thing he assumes is that he's going to prevail in his union dispute. Now, I don't know about anybody out there, but I know that when you're designing budgets, you design budgets on your current cash flow, not some projected cash flow that may happen if you get an unfriendly side to agree to something. In other words, what I'm saying is he's designing his budget based on a theory that he can't prove is going to happen. They don't know how the arbitration will go. Now, they can assume they're going to win. I assume they're going to win because I think the system of arbitration is set up against labor, and I don't think you can prevail the way it's set up. I think you're going to lose. But nevertheless, he should not be designing budgets based on money that he does not have in hand. And as far as I'm concerned, that's close. That's very close to malfeasance of duty because you don't create all this new service and tell everything is wonderful. You don't tell everybody that everything is wonderful unless you can absolutely say you can deliver. But as it stands now, Mcfarlane doesn't know for sure that he can deliver this. But yet he's designed his whole budget around this theory. I think it's despicable. I mean, I think it's pure incompetence to go around designing a budget with cash that you don't have on hand right now.
So again, just to recap the process, we launched the budgeting process internally to the agency in early January. We kicked off the General Manager's Budget Task Force at about the same time. We had a March briefing where we actually released to you the draft budget and also released to the public for comment. Also at the March briefing, the General Manager's Budget Task Force chair provided a report to you on their findings and observations about the budget. At your March business meeting, you actually approved the budget to be forwarded to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. And you recall in April we had a very informative public hearing with them where you and staff responded to, I think, some really excellent questions that were asked by the TSCC board members themselves. I'd also just note, by the way, at the TSCC that they continue to look at this budget as a model budget. I think one of the reasons that they do that and they like this budget is we are a single-purpose district, and it makes it a little more straightforward.
Single-purpose district, like what? Transit district, or what? Property development company, or information and technology company, or what exactly kind of company is TRIMET? It's certainly not a single-purpose company.
Our budget is, as these public budgets go, relatively straightforward. I'd also note that at your briefing a couple of weeks ago, Dave Luxier went through some of the last-minute true-ups that we were proposing in this budget that is actually embedded in the resolution that's before you. Those mainly had some additional costs associated with improving our maintenance program on the rail side, personnel staff. and some one-time only costs related to IT. And then also a change that just related to potential refinancing to save some money of some bonds that were, again, more of an accounting measure than a real budgetary issue. So here we are today, and I think as this should be, this is a very important decision for the board. This has been a long process and a very studied one, and I've appreciated the board's question involvement along the way. Just to note, the highlights, our operating budget is $494.3 million. On the revenue side, we base the budget on the rebounding economy on the payroll tax, and we believe that the most recent results we've seen from the payroll tax do support the projections going forward. But again, we'll always be tied to the performance of the payroll tax.
Okay, now he's saying that the payroll tax, they're projecting a certain amount of growth over the whatever period of time. They're not projecting flat. They're building into their budget a projected increase. Once again, I have a problem with that. Why are you projecting in money that you don't know is coming? I mean, you would maintain the budget that you had last year. You wouldn't build in more until you had more. I mean, what's so bad about getting a surplus in the budget rather than spending money that you don't have and hoping that you're going to get it? Why don't you not spend it, and then when you have the surplus, you can then spend it, and that you know that you have it? See, the way they do business over here really bothers me.
As an agency, we've programmed flat federal operating assistance in terms of the federal funds that come to TRIMET. As our lobbyist in D.C. will say, flat is the new up in Washington, D.C. So that's good news. Again, no changes to the adult fare. Matter of fact, no fare increase at all, and some switch that we'll talk about in terms of funding related to the youth fare and the port.
No, there's no fare increase this year, but if you look at the budget document, they have one planned for the next year and every year after that. So the reason they haven't had one this year, I'm sure, is because of all the flack about Mcfarlane stealing money from the pot without telling anyone. So they're hoping some time goes by so that the public won't remember all of this, because we all know that the public has a very short memory, and nobody follows this stuff like I do and a couple other people. And so they didn't raise the fares because they knew there's still an issue in the public's mind about the executives stealing that raise from themselves. By next year, hopefully nobody will be thinking about it and they can get away with it.
Public school program that's at issue in the last ordinance that is on your agenda here today. Again, I just wanted to mention the labor contract issue again, and to emphasize that we're not inflexible. We have certain financial stability criteria that we need to meet, and there's lots of ways to meet that, and we're happy to continue to work with the ATU to reach that outcome, recognizing again that the best outcome would be a negotiated outcome.
There he goes again, lying through his teeth, and lying with a straight face and in that monotone of his. God, he's such an impressive liar. I mean, you have to really congratulate him for his ability to lie like that. Like he really they don't want any Yeah, they want a negotiated contract. Yeah, give us everything we want. And you're not going to get that. We're going to have to go to arbitration to get that. Why would we just give it to you? You have to be out of your mind. And there he is, lying again with a totally straight face.
I'd also just note that this budget has, I think, a lot of good news for our customers, for our riders. We have $7.1 million in new service being added. That's an investment in both frequent service and in the investments to improve service on another 11 bus lines, and that deals with overcrowding and schedule reliability. We're continuing our program of accelerated bus replacement, 64 new buses programmed for fiscal year 15. That keeps us on our track of being at an average bus age of 8 years by in 2016, which has been our long-term goal. I'd also note that we've got some, I think, really exciting state of good repair projects overall that will help to improve the reliability of the MAC system overall. One sort of immediate for customer service is the GPS system being extended to the max to better track our trains and provide better information to our customers. We've talked about the electronic fare system and that fare system replacement. This budget supports the ongoing steps associated with that. As you know, a long multi-year program. And we have a number of customer facility improvements include, for example, the Washington Park Station, which is looking a little tired in some areas. I would also note that the budget includes the initial funding for an additional DMU for the West system, and you did receive a comment.
So one has to wonder, where did all this money come from? Where all of a sudden everything is coming up roses at TriMet? And one has to wonder what's the big difference between when they were, last year when they're cutting 2 years ago, cutting services, raising fares, the sky's falling while they hid themselves a raise. And today, well, I put it to you, and if you've been tracking this information, you'll know that Opal, the group Opal, it's a citizens group that I have nothing to do with, by the way, other than watching, actually called TriMet out on their budget, and they said that it was all based on wrong figures and lies. And now we are 2 years later, and everything Opal said came to fruition. They're not getting any credit for this. Nobody's covering it. I'm the only person that even noticed it, I think, other than the Opal people themselves. It's really a disgrace. The media in this city is a complete disgrace because they never investigate one issue with TriMet, unless it's like a drivers, they're oh so happy to come after drivers when it comes to overtime, when it comes to crashes. But what have they done with the managers? Oh, they were upset that they couldn't get the information about the drivers. They haven't really touched the management at all. And the management has really, even when they hid the raises, it only got a little bit of media attention, not much. So, we have a real problem in getting the truth out about TriMet. We can't get the mainstream. The mainstream is in TriMet's pocket. Look at the money going through there. All that money is spread through all of these different organizations that are insiders, and there's no way anybody's going to stop that money flow. And why is TriMet spending that kind of money for another West? West still hasn't met its projections when they started it, and here they are spending more money on another train. Really, when it comes to TriMet spending on things that are not essential, they certainly come up with the money easily, don't they?
Related to this, and I just wanted to note that the budget provides the authority to do that. Budget authority to do that. It doesn't provide the contract authority to do that. So we will obviously be coming back to you if we're successful in negotiating a good option with the manufacturer with a contract action, and that would be, I think, the appropriate time for you really to look into that. But again, that budget authority is in the budget to give you the flexibility to decide that either way at a future time. So I just also note related to Harry's last presentation, there are a number of safety and security improvements that we've included in the budget as well. Continuing the safety certification program for the operators and our supervisors and our trainers. We have, again, improvements to the West positive train control. Those are federally required, but nonetheless positive improvements. As Harry noted, improvements to our CCTV technology on trains and buses. So as state-of-the-art as we try to be in 1 year, a few years later, we need to catch up, and that's where we are with all of that. In addition, we have a number of pedestrian improvements, particularly focused on areas where we're seeing a great deal of growth around the rail alignment. And two particular areas, 7th and Holiday, around the Convention Center Hotel, and around Orenco is a third area, and where we're seeing dramatic changes in land use, and we want to make sure that our pedestrian facilities really are aligned with the new flows that will continue with that increased development. I'd also just note that, as we've discussed before, this includes the ability for about a 3% non-union raise, and any union raise would be what would...
Right, there it is, buried in the end of the comments. Joe Rose totally didn't put it in anything that he wrote. I brought it up in a comment, but that's useless. I mean, it was completely left out of the mainstream media. That 3% is a lot for people that are making six figures. Okay, that's a lot of money there. And that's a lot of money going to the people that don't need any money. They're already doing well. It's an insult to everybody, especially to the TRIMET union employees, that these managers are never happy with the salaries. They just got themselves a 3% raise. Or actually, there was a lot more than 3% raise because they hid the raises by changing job titles and such. You know, they've been very sneaky about the way they're giving themselves money. And here they are again, sneaking it in right at the end of the presentation.
Be called for in our ATU contract. To your comments, Mr. Board President, we did hear from the public. We had about 50 comments through our customer service department. And I would say that the reaction has generally been quite positive, particularly around the service, crowding, and schedule reliability topics. We had a number of suggestions for specific improvements on lines. Those included most frequently the Green Line max service, the 12, the 35, the 44, the 51 in areas around Lake Oswego. We're looking at that, but what we also do is look at our own statistics of overcrowding and schedule reliability that we have very good information on as we program the specific improvements. We also, there was a great deal of public support for more maintenance focus related to the max reliability issues. So that hit a resonance with a number of the commenters. But we also, on the flip side, saw some negative comments associated with additional funding for the West DMU or any light rail improvements. There was that side of people viewing that as...
Wow, he actually admitted that there were a lot of negative comments about that West. Why would anybody support that? I mean, that's a slap in the face to all of us that they continue to pour money into that thing. At least he acknowledged it. You know, we all know that these public comments mean nothing. They go through this process because they're supposed to, but they don't mean anything to them.
It's a trade-off with the bus system. And again, our view to that is that it's a system that needs to work together. So those are the process and highlights of this year's budget. It's a little bit longer report than I usually get, but it's a very important topic, and certainly willing to address any questions and bring up the experts if you have them.
Mr. Mcfarlane, when I look at you and I'm here in person, you don't appear to be anything like the man I represent you as on my blog. You seem perfectly like a reasonable, nice guy. But yet, all of these things that have been happening since you've been here are pretty crazy, okay? And I don't understand, either you don't know or they're not telling you or something. You don't seem like the kind of man that would perpetuate this kind of stuff. The first thing I have here, Mr. Mcfarlane, is a judgment against me ordering me to pay you $150 for one of the lawsuits that I lost. So I'll make a deal with you. I'll pay you your $150 if you pay me back for my health insurance that you stole from us in the year 2009 and 2010.